we're going to go ahead and get started. We do not have a presentation. This is going to be a very relaxed panel today. So my name is Janae. I go by on Instagram, call you Miss Royalty. Been involved in the convention scene for a little while now, and I've been interested in the topic of writing comics and independent publishing. So I'm going to be interviewing these two gentlemen here who have been doing indie comics for quite some time now. So I'll let them introduce themselves and give us a little bit of information about the things that they do.
My name is Greg Anderson Elysée, born and raised Brooklyn. You see, it's my people's here, yo. Absolutely. All right, my fault. Nah, I see how it is. Born and raised Brooklyn. I am the writer and creator of a comic book series called Is None of the Word Spider. Based off of Announcer the Spider, incorporating mythologies from Africa, Caribbean, African American. A lot of my work, I tend to try to focus mainly on just blackness, black spirituality, black culture, and try to find different ways that I can showcase diversity in fantasy and speculative fiction, because I was tired of us being the side characters and the supporting character, and I was like, nah, we need to be the main characters. So that's what I'm all about.
Amen. That's all you do?
That's all right. So, aside from Is Not the Word Spider, my most recent book is from Scholastic and Cabinet Publishing called Dreamer, which is about the life of Akeem Aliwu, who's an actual black hockey player. And he's known as the man who sort of exposed the racism that happens behind the scenes. Because as we know, hockey, it's not really black. It's not really people of color. It's like 5% people of color, not even just 5% black, 5% people of color. And despite that, they tried to push this whole hockey is for everyone, this whole diversity type of thing. But you know, behind the scenes, there's a lot of hazing against the people of color, and the coaches sort of targeting particular folks. And so I was reached out by Scholastic to, link up with Akeem, who actually came from a Ukrainian and Nigerian background, because both his parents are interracial couple, lived in both countries, and also dealt with racism because they were an interracial couple. So there's that backstory that you see in the book. You also see Akeem's backstory as well, of him trying to be this kid who discovers his passion but has to deal with the racism that he discovers at an extremely young age, being called the N-word because he was scoring more than anyone else on the team by, hateful white parents who didn't want to see their kids sort of sucking compared to the black folks on the team. So that, along with a whole bunch of other books, but I don't want to, steal the shine from my boy Greg here.
Ain't no shine stealing nothing. My name is Greg Burnham. I'm a writer and a publisher. On the indie side, I co-create a book called Tuskegee Heirs with Holmes Volume. And I have a series, The Search for Saadiqah. I just launched a Kickstarter for issue 2 today, so talk to me if you want to talk to me. And then what else? I just released a book with my brother recently called The Story of Solace, which it was a book that he has been working on for like 12, 13 years. So I finally kind of did the big brother thing and threatened his life. It was like, yo, do you want to do this? And so, louder? I gotta save this voice. That book. I also write children's books. I just recently released a children's book called Swim Kelly Swim. I was part of the DC Milestone Initiative. So my DC debut was last month, and then I just recently announced I have another story in the Halloween anthology that's coming out October 4th.
Who you writing? Who you writing?
No.
Who you writing? Superman? Oh shoot! A black man is writing Superman.
It's just gonna be 10 pages though, so don't be like thinking you're gonna get like
best 10 pages
story.
bad at 9 pages. You know what I'm saying?
And I just got some art, man. I gotta show you. Like, All right.
So the unofficial title of this panel is the Greg and Greg panel.
Yes. Yes, it works. That's what it should have been.
Is that like matching hats?
Yeah.
We probably wouldn't have got approved.
That was my fear. Okay, so I have a couple preliminary questions and then we'll get right into the whole writing of comics. So the first question for you two is, why did you go into indie comics in the first place? And is it something that you've always wanted to get into?
From the indie standpoint, like honestly, like I've always had like this entrepreneurial student. I found a spirit student. I have some students that, never mind, that's a different story. But yeah, like I found an onion patch in my backyard when we lived in Missouri, and I plucked those onions and I went around the neighborhood and sold those to kids that were weird enough to buy them for like 25 cents. So I've always had like, you know, I don't want to sit around and wait for somebody to tell me I can do something or I can't do it. So honestly, I moved to Atlanta in like 1999, and one of the first things I did was like, I want to try to find an artist because I want to do this comic book. And so one of my homeboys brought this like 19-year-old kid to my house. He had cornrows. It was so funny because I'm talking about Marcus. If y'all know Marcus, y'all didn't see the cornrow days. But yeah, it was like we hit it off. I pitched the story to him. He started drawing stuff right there. I was like, hey, you want to make a comic? He's like, yeah, let's do it. And we were way too dumb to not know what we didn't know. So we make this comic. Turns out to be pretty cool. We're selling it out of Criminal Records. Ain't nobody from Atlanta in here, because y'all would have been like, oh, Dana knows. So yeah, we're selling, but we're actually losing money because we were printing them at Kinko's, which you young people call the FedEx. We were printing them, we were formatting, we're doing everything, stapling, everything, probably not even paying exactly how much we should be paying to Kinko's. I think we're the reason they make you, stick your card in the thing now. But so it was costing us about $10 to make a book, and the store was selling them for like $4. So it was like, yo, people keep buying this book, and it's just making us more broke. So we had to go back and learn the business. But just to that question, it was all like, I don't have time. I grew up in the 80s and some of the 70s, and I've heard everything. You can't have more than 3 black characters. You can't have black characters with speaking lines. Like, I was never into any of that. So it's like, we'll do it our way and then let the chips fall.
I think for me, I've always been into comics. I discovered my first comic book around the 2nd grade. And I think from there that sort of became what I knew I wanted to do. I think by middle school, I was writing fan fiction stuff. And by high school, I was just like, nah, I want to make comic books. And I remember discovering independent comics in around middle school, high school, and realizing, oh, this isn't Marvel and DC, And I still loved Marvel and DC, but there was something about independence. Like, for most people, I feel like their introduction to independent was like something like Spawn. And I got obsessed with Spawn, and I was like trying to find every damn Spawn book I can find. And that eventually opened me up to just different Image comics. And I remember doing some more research and finding that black folks was making their own comics. And I was like, oh shoot, this is pretty dope. And then I found like the Black Comic Book Convention at the Schomburg. That was like I think it was like the first year they did it. And I went when like no one was really at that convention. Now if you go, it's people are in lines for like around the block trying to get in. But at the first time, there was barely anyone showing up, but it was still a good crowd. And I just remember being exposed to that and just loving that energy and discovering like, yo, we actually create our own characters. We can own our own characters and stuff. And I think all those different multiple things and my mentors that I had, they sort of encouraged, I guess, my creativity of I can do this myself. And a lot of it also stems from me being a black kid, huge horror fan, huge fantasy fan. And I was, again, never really seeing us as the main character. And I just wanted to be one of the people who would try to help change that narrative a bit. I've always been very social and conscious about that, even as a kid, of encouraging blackness and knowing what that is and being proud of it. And I've had some great teachers who just sort of drilled that in our heads, and all my peers would get tired of it, but I loved it. So yeah, that was pretty much what I've always wanted to just do independent comics. I get asked sometimes of, oh, do you want to write for Marvel and DC? It'll be cool, I mean, for like popularity and getting my name out and stuff like that, but deep down, I'm definitely an indie guy.
Okay.
And can I just, not try not to take too long, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention Brother Man, like in the early 90s, Milestone. Like I remember, I used to watch Arsenio Hall like every night, and I remember Arsenio Hall talking about Brother Man, and I'm like, what? And like now these guys are like mentors for me, so you know that's huge. But all the guys that were making, like my grandmother brought me a book, and it wasn't the greatest book, but in Kansas City there was a guy who was making a book called Omega Man, and you know, it was, some of it was fraternity based, but that was another. And it's like, you know, at my, you know, for my age, my time, I hate to sound like the old man, but like that was unheard of. You know what I mean? Like, oh, this dude just decided he wanted to make a comic. You can do that, you know. So.
Okay. So right into the questions, right? So let's just say I want to write a comic, but I don't really have a storyline in mind. I just know I want to do one. What would you recommend I do to help inspire creative ideas to get an actual concept for my story?
So I feel like we always got ideas. I don't think no one doesn't have an idea, you know, because even if it's watching a movie and you're realizing this movie, I'm sorry, I'm gonna cuss. Is there any kids? All right.
Are we allowed to cuss?
Are we allowed to cuss?
Yes.
I'm a potty mouth.
She was like, yes.
Encourage even.
Fuck yeah. All right. So, watching a movie, you could be like, yo, this movie fucking sucks. You know, I would have done this differently. I would have done that differently. That's an idea right there. You know, every single concept that you've watched, it's not original. Everything has stemmed from something. Everything has stemmed from, what if I mix this, or what if I put in my life story and incorporate something like this, that, and the third. So everything has been taken from something else. That's an idea, whatever it is. Even if it's just a small, like, I woke up in the morning and a spaceship just came out and that's all you have, that's an idea. What can you do? What movies have been done where you're like, nah, this didn't really work, but I thought this was cool. Maybe if I mix this up, you know, just go with it. The thing is, when it comes to ideas, for most people, it stays an idea. And that is the issue that a lot of people have. So I always tell people, whenever someone comes up to me, be like, oh, I have this great idea, this great concept. All right, cool, did you write it down? No, but I have it in my head. How often do you guys hear that? I know some of it is you guys. Some of it is you guys, right? Some of it is you guys. But think of this. And so instead of, I have this idea in my head, just put it down on a piece of paper, you know? Hey, open up your Google Docs, put it down, whatever it is, just put it down, try to figure out what you want to do with it. If it takes you a month, if it takes you a year, take some time, even if it's like 10, 20 minutes a day, put a timer just for you to just write whatever idea it is. It could be crappy, it don't need to be great, just as long as it's out of your freaking head, you know, and then watch something that might inspire you, that makes you decide, you know, okay, this is what I might want to do with it, learn about structure, read up on the writers that you actually like, not the ones that everyone is saying, no, read this. Who do you like? See if they've ever done an interview where they say, why don't you try this when it comes to writing? try to find some writing books and learn about how the structure of how to make a comic book, because the way you write a comic book script is very different from, you know, a movie script. There's similarities, but there's a particular type of structure or format that you need. So just do some research on that. Don't be afraid to reach out to some cats, ask some questions, and so on and so forth. So it's really about just putting your ideas down, trying to figure out all the different things that you want to do. What is the beginning, what is the middle, what is the end, and so on and so forth. And we have a question. Are we doing Q&A?
Yeah.
You want to ask?
No.
Yeah. What's good?
So you're saying to listen, you know, to try to, you know, read and then get inspired from the writers that you write. So, like, in doing that, how do you, or rather, how do you prevent yourself from being almost too influenced, where you start to almost write your shit like they're clean, and I was like, hey, he's writing my style, not. So, how do you?
I would say honestly, we've seen that. That's actually a pretty common thing to see. But I would say simply don't do that. I mean, you can take your inspiration from something, but at the same time, in what ways is yours very different from what inspired you? Because you have your own story, you have your own life experiences that you've done that maybe that same creator did not do or incorporate within their story. And the thing is, there's always gonna be folks saying, oh, this is just this and that. This is just a rip-off of this and that and the third. It's really not. It's just your own version of that story, you know? But I'd say just really pinpoint what makes your story different and what is the similarities. If there is a lot of similarities, take it out. You know, just as long as the theme and the core of the message that you're trying to say is still there and still intact, I say you're good to go. And just fuck the naysayers, honestly.
Yeah, you know,
And just to kind of piggyback, so when you're looking, like there's certain writers I don't have any problem with. David Walker is like, he's one of my favorite writers, just like in any genre.
Best right now.
And the thing that I love about him is that it looks simple. I know it's not simple. You know it's not simple because we do this a lot. But for the reader, it's like really easy to read, right? It's not like you're, like some people, it's like where you like, God, let me go get a drink of water so I can get back into this. Like I go through his book so quick. I mean, I'll be like at the end, like, dang it, I gotta read it again because I ain't get enough of it, you know? So I look at David, Rodney Barnes. Rodney Barnes is a dude, I don't think I'll ever be able to be that good. And there's, no, I'm just saying he's amazing. Like what he does with words is like insane. You know what I'm saying?
And history.
You know how,
He mixes history and fantasy in like such a crazy way.
Things. And then he can hit like all these different genres. So he's writing the Lakers show. The Lakers are the greatest basketball team that ever lived. He's writing that show and he's doing Philadelphia and Blackula. Like he's all over with it. But I still read them because it's like, that's an inspiration for me. Gail Simone, like what she does with like dialogue, I'm just like, sounds like, I can hear it, like people are really saying this stuff, you know? So it's like, you can look at them and be inspired by what they do, but you don't have to try to necessarily mimic them. Because at the end of the day, you put your own, like Greg said, you put your life, your experience into it. You know what I'm saying?
right.
Okay, so how do we get to the point where we've written down our idea, right? But it's just an idea, it's not an actual story that people want to read. So like, what do we do to get it to a point where it's something that's digestible, that people are actually interested in?
I think that's where like the technical side, so Greg said it, like, whether you're reading books or you talking to somebody, I'm sure you talk to him, you talk to me, like we can give you all, you know, all the steps that we go through. But
What are the steps? Tell us the steps. What are the steps?
Some steps take a long time. I'm trying to like
Give us a
I'll
strategy.
jump. Alright, so for me, there's idea, right? So sometimes it might take me even a whole year of just coming up with the concept because I'm busy with whole other projects. But whatever idea I have for a particular concept or characters, or sometimes it's just a scene. I don't even know what the story is, but I have a scene in my head. I will write that down. And over time, you start compiling them all together and you start to figure out, all right, so what does when take place, who is this character, and so on and so forth. Eventually, you're gonna find this period of time where you just decide, I'm gonna start actually putting everything together. I usually try to encourage people not to write in order, because I've realized with a lot of people, they get to that point of, I'm stuck, or what is it, writer's block, because they don't know where to go next. But I'm like, whatever scene excites you at that moment, just write that scene. Even if it's literally the last part of the book, you don't have the beginning, write that scene down, and eventually you start to realize you get excited trying to fill in the blanks, and you start moving them around as a puzzle. So after you figure out the structure, the outline, or the spine of your story, start to figure out, how am I gonna break this down into pages now? So when it comes to comics, for the most part, on average, there's like 6 panels. The panels are all the boxes that you're reading. They can go from like 4 panels to 8 to 9 to 10, whatever. Remember, the more panels you got, the less details the drawing is gonna be, the less space you're gonna have for the dialogue. So around 5 and 6 is the most basic average to get everything. After you figure that out, you need to save a shit ton of money if you cannot draw, because you wanna hire a really dope and professional artist. And this is where a lot of people fuck up.
Yeah.
Because then it comes to a point of, I just want this drawn, I just want this out. And then we see a lot of shitty comic books out there, right? But it also comes down to style. Sometimes the style just may not be for you. So find the style that you are willing not to settle for. Like, this actually excites you. Do some research on who the artist is. Ask around, see who they've worked with, because sometimes their artwork is great, but they are not professional. Or they will steal all your money, thinking, oh, I just gotta wait this long to get my book, or whatever, right? So you figure out who your creative team that you want, your artist, your colorist, sometimes it's a different person, and then there's also the letterer, and the person who's gonna get it ready for print. So there's a whole process to making this comic book, and it sounds a lot. It is a lot. It's expensive as hell. You're gonna be pissed off and frustrated, but at the same time, making a comic is not as difficult as you think it is. Once you do it, you're like, oh, this is all it was, but it's not as easy as you think it is at the same time.
So you brought up the panels. Do I have to have that in mind when I'm writing the story, like 6 panels and however many dialogue bubbles?
The way I do it is I'll just write out the scene. I don't even break down yet. After I have the
so
whole
when you say
scene,
write out the scene,
I just write out, like, we talking right now. I'm writing this whole dialogue with no care in the world how many pages this dialogue is gonna be, without any care how many pages, panels, anything. After I've scripted out every single thing, every single piece of dialogue, every look that you're giving me, the fact that I'm moving this mic, stuff like that, put it all down. Maybe it all means something. After I figure that out and I'm cool with it, then I'll start to break down, all right, this can fit in panel 1, this can fit all the way up to panel 6, and eventually from there, after you finish it, you get to figure out, all right, this might be too long, this is way too many pages, this is way too many dialogue, this motherfucker talks too much, shit like that. So you start to edit a lot, and I'd say that's pretty much, for me, that's what I do. And then eventually, if you have a limit for the full book, you condense it how you need it to be, or you can just say, F it, I'll pay for all the pages, and just do it. Just, flesh it out.
And so everybody, so many people are gonna do this stuff differently. I typically start with a page count. That's the first thing I do is I say, how many pages is this? Sometimes the publisher or whoever is gonna tell you it's a 10 pager, it's a 20, 30, whatever. So if I'm gonna say 30, so I know what I have to work with. Now I write out, kind of like my description of what's gonna happen for that entire issue. Once you get that, get that done, then I start to do a page breakdown. So on page 1, this is what's gonna happen. Page 2, I do all of that, and then I break them to the panels next. So like what Greg said, you can't, I try to mix it up. You know how you see those books where it's 4 panels, 4 panels, 4 panels, 4 panels. Somebody's lazy. Yeah. I don't know if it's the writer or the artist, but somebody's lazy. If it's just box, 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 box. You know what I'm saying? So it's one one page, it might just be a splash, which is like one
whole
big
page.
image, you know? And then the next page, I might have 5 or 6. I try to keep my reader off balance a little, so they don't get into like the same rhythm, like, oh, I bet you when I turn this page, it's gonna be 5 more panels, you know what I'm saying? It's gonna be different. I encourage artists to like be creative, come up with different types of layouts, you know, just so we can keep it, because we do, like when I write, I always try to think of like how I am when I'm a reader, and the stuff that I critique, you know, like, oh, this is getting, they ain't, you know, they're not taking no chances, they're not, you know, so it's like, you know, it's kind of like shifting gears, just constantly let you get in a little bit of rhythm and then hit you with something new. There's the page turner, you know, thing, which is, you know, when you're considering odd pages, it's usually on this side. So it's like these little mini cliffhangers at the end of your odd page that cause people to turn to the next page, right? So that's when I bring up David Walker. I mean, like, he's great at it to where you're just like flipping through this book and you're done, you know? So those are all things that you keep in mind. But I do it like systematically, and not all the time, because sometimes, like Greg said, it's like, nah, this scene right here is powerful, so I gotta switch what I normally do because I want to get this out. This is the meat of the story. But yeah, I try to do that because it's kind of like, in that I'm writing a script that I can give to my artist, I can give it to my colorist, I can give it to the letterer. Everybody can be working off the same script.
And just to add to that, agreeing with the whole changing the number of the panels, like find your favorite comic books. I'm just gonna say not Watchmen, only because Watchmen has a particular structure with the pages, because it's like almost every page is a 9-panel thing, and it works for the story that they're trying, you know, that they're telling. But find all your favorite comic books. Look at the way the writer and the artist work together in order to break down the pages, and you'll see all the different types of panels and how they laid it out, how they broke everything down. It's always very different. It keeps it going in a particular way. And if you notice, sometimes a lot of action scenes tend to be less panels, just because it's such a dynamic moment, and you really want the art to breathe. And also, don't be afraid to sometimes have a page or two where you just tell your artist, have fun. You know, just as long as it starts here and it ends here, you figure out what happens in between. And a lot of artists, they love that stuff, you know, and it really helps to build a rapport with your artists, because you guys are collaborators. It's like a director and a cinematographer trying to figure out what's the best visuals in order to tell the audience.
And I love that you said, just give me 1 second. I love that you said that, because I don't ever want my artist to feel like he's just doing art for money. I want him to be immersed just like I am. I typically, if I'm working with a new artist, I'd be like, what do you like to draw? Like, what, you know, tell me the stuff that you want to show, because it's also like, I always look at every book as like a resume, right? Somebody picks that book up, you know, from somewhere, you might not even be there, but they, you know, go through it, and it's like, okay, this artist is cool. Let me find this guy, you know, let me find this writer. So what do you like to draw? Like, so I can try to figure out ways to incorporate that as well. Question?
Yeah, I have a question. Earlier we were talking about story, and you said about, like, if you're having writer's block, like, if there's a scene that inspires you, just write that scene. Is there any particular, like, when you're writing, do you just use Word, or is there a particular software, or do you, like, put like a line that just says fill in later, or like, what do you do?
So I prefer notebook, pencil, pen. I tend to, I know, a lot of people are like, what? So whatever is like in my mind at the moment, I find it easier for it to flow when I'm literally writing by hand, you know? And sometimes I wouldn't even call it a writer's block. Maybe I feel like I have a harder time typing like straightforward, unless like I'm in this weird zone and I can just like word vomit, just put everything down. But I realized for me, there's something that happens with my mind when I'm literally writing on paper, and sometimes I've told some of my friends whenever they're going through writer's block, I'm just like, write that same idea, just literally physically write it down, and they realize it actually comes out. I don't know why that is, but there's this weird mind-body connection thing that happens when you're writing as opposed to typing everything out. But I carry a notebook with me everywhere. If I'm too lazy to open up my bag, I have my notes on my phone and my Google Doc app that I'm always opening up. I'm putting ideas down as well. But it comes down to what works for you. You know, if you hate writing like physically, but you rather type, go for that. You know, or just whatever, as long as you get something down, I'd say that works. And sometimes it's just think of one dialogue, one piece of dialogue in your mind, and that's all you can write that day. That's better than the dialogue you didn't have the day before. You know, so just any way that you can overcome that type of writer's block, or find a book that you enjoy, find a writer who knows how to do these crazy rhythm schemes with their, like Toni Morrison and James Baldwin, I think are like some of the best writers you'll ever read, who makes me feel terrible sometimes being a writer, because I'm like, damn, I'll never be able to write this good. But it inspires me of like, oh, I can't wait to write. You know, so I hope that helped.
So do you just like rearrange the pages that you physically write out, or like?
So you can do that. So just like when I said, I don't like to write in order. I just jump into whatever scene is in my head at the moment, whatever excites me, and then I'll start to piece it together like a puzzle. Because sometimes the scenes that you felt like were boring, or you didn't really care for that much, but you knew it was important to the story, eventually you get to that point where you're like, well, I have to connect these two exciting scenes now, and you realize that scene really wasn't that difficult to write. You know, or sometimes, given time, an idea that you originally had that you thought was a little whack, after some time you realize, oh wait, I can actually make it better because you rested on it a little bit instead of rushing to try to get to that next point.
I wanted to go from that step to the next one, which is you have the idea, you've written it down, you have it ready, you're ready to edit it, you're ready to put it together. And as everybody has been saying, it's a collaborative effort. How do you take that from the I know what I want and put it mechanically into the this is what I want it to look like on the page? Do you do it like a screenplay? Do you do it like in columns? Like what? How do you get it from I know what I see in my brain to talking, especially if you're using someone else as an illustrator, to get them to see what you see?
So that's descriptive writing, and if you're gonna write comics, especially like at a decent clip, then you're gonna have to, you know, get proficient in descriptive writing. I tell, like my brother, I'm working right now, example, please don't hate me. I'll be like, okay, what does this look like? And he'll give me this thing. I'm like, why does it look like that? Oh, that's just how I see it in my head. I don't care what you see in your head. We need to be able to convey this to the artist. And he's gonna say, well, why does it gotta be like, you know, like if you're drawing a hard line, right? So you have to be able to really describe that. I was explaining, like when I went to the DC, you know, they put us through this writing course and all this stuff. And it was so much more stuff that I have to put in a script for them than I was doing. Like when we're doing it, it's like guerrilla warfare. It's like, yo, here's your art, like do this art. No, they want everything. So I need to tell them what time of day it is, what the lighting is like, what the lighting source comes from, you know, like all these different things. So you just have to like work. It's like that with screenplays too, right? But maybe not as detailed. But if you're gonna be a stickler now, if you want your artist to just go willy-nilly, you know, and like let him decide, like, you know, a lot of the stuff, then that's cool, but then you can't be mad at him if the art doesn't do what you wanted it to do, right? So, I'm with Greg, like certain points, it's like, I asked the artist, what do you think here? Like, what would you know, how would you like to draw this scene out? But then there's other parts, stuff that I know has to be in there, that I have to be extremely descriptive to make sure that it comes out looking decently And I've seen the difference from the way that I write scripts independently versus when I'm writing for a publisher. It's like I'm looking at the art and I'm like, okay, this is exactly what I saw, but I told them exactly what I wanted.
But as someone who teaches young students and trying to develop their writing, for each of you, could you give me, and I know this might be a big ask, but like some of your favorite examples for introducing students to comics and graphic novels, and exercises for getting them to like write outside of, because you know, like I work at a school where there's a very strict and like narrow curriculum, and it's very whitewashed, and it's very like even the plays and the screenplays are very like not dull because it's still writing, there's good work, but it's how do I get them to like take that material and kind of see like my ideas could be in the same format or on the page.
I guess like we do a lot of stuff in schools. One of the things, like when we walk in the door, they look at us and they're like, the kids, like, who these dudes? And then when they find out that we're actually the ones that create the comics, they lose it. When they see comics with kids that look like them, they lose it. So I think that's like your very first step, is introducing them to stuff that resonates with them, right? I mean, I grew up, I went to mostly white schools until I moved to Louisiana. My dad was in the military. So it's like they would bring in like this like snooty, you know, professor type writer with a cardigan and an ascot, and I would be like, you can't tell me nothing. There's nothing I want to hear from you, because there's nothing about what I see in you that makes me think that I could even do this. So we go, Marcus pulls out the digital, you know, and starts drawing, and these kids are looking at us like we're magicians or something. And we just constantly, no man, we just regular. You know what I'm saying? We're regular. And like, so that to me is like a great first step.
I will recommend Writing for Comics by Peter David. Only the reason why I recommend that is because I think that when I finished reading that book, that's when I was like, nah, this is what I really want to do for sure in my life. But it breaks down the whole aspect of ideas and structure and so on. And I feel like it's written in such a way, in the way the book is formatted, with very colorful. I think it's enough to keep them engaged. And I would also recommend seeing if you can find this man called Victor Dandridge, who literally creates these various types of writing workshops, including how to introduce creating ideas and stories for kids and the youth. And he does a lot of amazing stuff where I'm just like, how the hell did I not think of that? And it's just like, I've been doing this for how many years? And he just thinks of these crazy creative ways, and then I get inspired. And I'm like, this is supposed to be for the kids, but I'm like, yo, this is actually pretty fun. So if you can remember Victor Dandridge, he has a whole bunch of stuff online that you can find, or you can just reach out to him and he'll happily help you. But yeah, and he's a black man as well. So just like Greg said, just introducing people who resemble who they are or their backgrounds, who are in that same type of industry and business, that's enough to inspire even the most hard-headed kid that I've realized, you know. So I'd say, yeah, if that helps.
It demystifies, you know, I think we were talking last night about how when we were kids, we didn't, like, we thought like books just came out of the sky, you know, like, yeah, there's an author name, but whatever. But when you like can actually break down like these how to write comic books and all that they demystify and take the magic away and just show like, dude, you can do this, you know? So that kind of stuff is huge for kids.
I would also recommend their books if you want to introduce your kids to comics, by the way. Yes, ma'am.
So, good question. If someone is creating a digital comic book, should they have a
I mean, I mean, you want to have like, so there's two different things. Like if you have an IP, you want to figure out if you can trademark like which part of it, like if it's the name or whatever. And then yeah, you want to have your work protected, of course. There are some people that they don't think it's that much because, like, if you're not making a whole bunch of money, do you have the money to spend on these kind of, you know, like copyrights and trademarks and stuff like that? But the flip side of it is, like, say you have like this. I buy every book that he puts out, and it's not as like one of my favorite things. And so he has this amazing property, but if it's not protected, then somebody could, you know, come in and snatch the name. And he has a legal case because you've been making this book for what, 5, 6 years?
Since 2016.
Yeah, so he has some kind of case, but you know, a lot of times when it gets to that point, it's big bank take little bank, you know. So if the right person steals, so it's always worth it to protect the work.
Let's say if you're trying to make a comic and if instead of hiring an artist, you want to collaborate with one, but you're trying to like network and meet artists because you don't know them. How would you go about finding those like comic artists to work with?
Now, when you say collaborate instead of hiring, you mean
Like co-write?
co-creating?
Yeah, co-create.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ooh.
Or is that like
So
next to impossible?
I'm not gonna say it's next to impossible. It's just it's like a can of worms that you're opening up. Because here's the thing, I feel like a lot of people get to that point of they want to do their own thing. They don't really have that same passion that you have as the story that you're trying to tell. And so the reason I would recommend just hiring somebody is because it becomes a contract. You know, it's work. So if you really want to get your stuff out there, you guys figure out when do you want to get certain pages done by. Like say within a week, if you can get 2 pages done a week and you can actually afford that, you guys make a contract, you make an agreement, and that's that you get your work out. Now, say you're collaborating. You don't know any artists. You find somebody, hey, can we collaborate? Yeah, sure, we can do that. Hit them up. Hey, I haven't seen anything. Oh, my fault. It's just I have this going on and that going on. Okay, cool. Next week? Yeah, I got you next week. How many weeks pass? And you're like, we're supposed to be coming up with something. And they was like, I got you. They send you something and you're like, that's what you were. So there's a whole bunch of different things. And it's sort of similar to the whole do not work with your friends type of thing, which I've learned not to do as well. Because before I made Isnana, I had another project I was working on with a childhood friend. We do not talk anymore because of trying to work together. But eventually when I was like, you know what, let me do it this way. I saved a lot of money, worked my ass off. I went to a couple of websites, put in an ad of like, this is what my project is about. I'm looking for an artist who can draw this, who's great with this, and so on. And it's paid. You want to tell them that it's paid. They start coming because everyone wants to work. Everyone wants to make some type of money. And from there, you have a whole bunch of folks coming. Then you can decide, I like this art style. I like this art style. Reach out to them, see if you guys vibe. Because sometimes you realize somebody's a bit of an asshole. You don't want to be stuck in a contract working with them, you know? So my recommendation is just to find somewhere to save money. And there's stuff like crowdfunding now, there's Kickstarter, where you can maybe just pay for 5 pages out of pocket, and you know, you make an agreement with your artist like, yo, if we make this amount of money from the Kickstarter, then I'll have money to give you for the rest of the book. But I have these 5 pages already drawn out, these sketches, these designs, and so on and so forth. I'd say that's easier, especially if you're an unknown, than trying to find a collaborator. Now, when you get some stuff out to prove your worth, like, oh, I have work done, I have this out, then you'll find artists who's willing to take a chance to actually collaborate with you. So I'd say it's stepping stones that you need to get through first before you can get to that level. But I don't know if you agree with that.
I mean, I agree. One of the parts I would add to that is, So think about it, like you come up with this IP, you think it's great, but you don't, whether you don't have the money or you don't want to spend the money or however it works, once you sign somebody up with a collaborator, like how are they gonna get paid? Because one day they're gonna need to get paid, right? So now you might have to split your IP with them 50-50, but it's your baby, you know, and they might not even knock it out the park. You're late, they might not even knock it out the park, and you might be looking for another artist for the next book, but you got, like, you owe them, you know what I'm saying? So collaboration works well, like you said, when you're established, or like if it's two people that, you know, like you come up with the idea together from the beginning, and they're an artist, you're a writer, or however, that's cool. But even then, you know, you gotta split. But if you come up with the IP, to me, you're doing yourself a disservice if you collaborate, because you're gonna have to give away, you know, that thing. And then the other part about it, just going a little bit further, like if it ever gets to the point where somebody wants it for film or TV or animation or any of that stuff, this is your partner. And so, like, you could be like, yeah, let's do this. And they could be like, I think we can hold out for more money. And you know what I'm saying? So if it's your IP, to me, it's always better to just figure out how to fork out the money, you know, keep it contract. DC, I just did a story for DC. I don't own none of it. They paid me, I signed a contract. They're like, yeah, man, get out of here until we call you again. But that's how they keep control of their brand, right?
Can you give a, this is kind of a two-part question, like a general idea of what we should expect to pay for an artist, the colorist, the letterer, and if it is, you mentioned you may be able to only pay for 5 pages, you know, right now. How the contracts are typically set up, 5 page, is that the best way to go about it, 5 page?
So every artist charges a different rate. Sometimes it depends on their experience. Sometimes it could be based off of their own day job that they have, or their life, whatever it is. Everyone charges differently. When I started writing, I would get lucky if I could get somebody who's willing to pay, who's willing to charge like $80 for like pencils, the inks, and that was that. Now you're hearing more so 100 to 125, 150, 200, whatever, right? Now if you're trying to get somebody who's worked for like Marvel and DC, good luck, because they're like, oh, 500 a page or 1,000 a page or whatever like that. But it really depends. It really depends on who you can get, right? And what they have going on that they're willing to charge a certain amount. But I'd say, let's say average for pencils and inks, $100. Let's just say that. Now, if you want your book colored, a colorist can charge from $30 to $70 or whatever, right? It's usually less than the pencils and inks, but around that range. And then you have the letterer, the person who puts your dialogue in and the sound effects and all that other stuff. They're like the final piece of the puzzle, and they make your shit look good as hell. If they're good. If they're good. If you've never lettered, do not letter your book. I think a lot of people decide, oh, it's just lettering, it's not that important or whatever. It's one of those things where if the lettering is really good, you really won't notice it. But if you notice it, then you know it's questionable lettering. But they sometimes can charge, let's say like 20, 25, sometimes higher, you know. But think of it as an average page for all the creative team can either go from $200 to $300 that it will cost you the page, right? So, and then that's not counting when you want to get it printed, you know? So you got to get it printed as well, get it all together, and then you're going to be the one who's sending the book out, most likely. Some people use other means to distribute, but usually for a lot of folks who can't afford that, we're sending it out ourselves. So that's another cost you got to think about. So when you see these Kickstarters who are charging their goal is like $5,000, that's because they don't think they're gonna make the amount of money that they actually need. That's just sort of like, okay, this can help me. When you see around 10,000, 15, 20, that's usually the ballpark of what's actually needed in order to make these comics. And then you start to realize there's costs you didn't really think about. And it sneaks up on you. And then your book gets delayed and people are like, where's my book? And you're just like, I'm sorry, you know? But just when it comes to the contract now, I always tell people, do not pay everything up front. Some people, like an artist would be like, oh, for this whole project, this is how much I'm charging. I need half of it now, or I need all of it now. That is one of the dumbest things you can ever do as a writer who's looking for an artist. What I would say is make an agreement of how many pages can you make within a week. Do you think you can do a week? Some artists can do 3 pages, which is cool. Some could do 5. And that's like an average that I've realized for myself. If you can actually afford 5 pages a week and they can actually produce 5 pages a week, that's your contract right there. Make sure you get it in writing. Every week after, you'll pay first. That way they know that you're about the business, they start working. You don't pay them until they actually fulfill those 5 pages a week. Then you pay for the next week, right? So, but every artist is different. Some artists, it takes them a whole month to do 10 pages, and that's just the way they work. If you're cool with that, you love their style, and you're willing, and that's all you can afford, just do it. You know, I would say that's how I go about business when it comes to paying my artists and making my comics and stuff.
What are some of those sneaky costs that you?
So when you start talking about crowdfunding, like shipping, it'd be out here murdering people. Cash fee having to pay out of pocket. So you need to calculate that. So to plug my Kickstarter that I released this morning, I'm trying to reach 9,000. That's going to include the shipping. It's going to include a significant print run, and it's going to include all the things Greg mentioned: your pencils and inks, colors, lettering. I also do a graphic design. Like I always try to put some money together for that, because maybe sometimes your letterer can do both, but certain letterers, they might not be good with dressing a cover. They might not be good, so I have another guy that I already trust that I know can, knock out the covers, and so I'm gonna pay him some money too, right? So, but so it's like you're gonna, those are some of the costs. There's also costs like sometimes stuff happens. You might have to get a new artist, right? So you might have to get a new artist, but especially with crowdfunding, shipping to me is the number one, because not only are you paying for postage, you have to have the supplies to ship stuff out. So you need to calculate all of that when you're deciding, how much you're trying to raise. The other part, like all these crowdfund sites, they're gonna take a cut. So Kickstarter is gonna take 6%, and then there's a 2% fee for like credit cards. So basically, they end up taking 8% off the rip. So like with Tuskegee Heirs, the thing says we made 74,000, but then after they took their cut, it was like 68, and then after the drop pledges, it was like 61.
There's a lot of people who drop their pledges, or their cards don't go through, and that's a lot of money.
Now, I employ, after that, I learned a lesson. I employ a little bit of soft collections. I do come from the financial, world, and so I'm gonna be hitting you up like, yo, man, it happened here. Like, no, but dude, over my last 3 Kickstarters, I've recovered like 70%, because there are people like, you might get a new card and you forget all about it, So there's different things that happen. Not everybody's just like, forget those guys, I'm just going,
So are Kickstarters profitable, or are Kickstarters a way for you to get your product to come to a con and sell that book?
So I look at Kickstarter. I don't depend on it to be profitable. I'm trying to get the book made and be able to get it out to the people that ordered, and hopefully, in my print run, I'm able to print overage that I can take to shows and sell online and all of that. But people that go into it thinking it can be profitable. Like what happened to us with Tuskegee Heirs, that was, we were able to put a little bit of money in our pocket, and basically start a publishing company with it. But overall, I don't think you should go into it thinking like, ooh, I'm gonna be able to pay a couple months rent or something. Like, don't do that because
yeah. So Greg is a rare exception when it comes to making profit. When it comes to Kickstarters, a lot of times people see, oh, this person made a lot of money, but you're also not thinking about the fact that a lot of that money you still have to compensate for the different people who jumped in that you weren't expecting. So you thought you were probably gonna have 100 backers. You end up having 500 backers. And you're thinking, oh shoot, I have more money, but you're like, dude, you have 400 more backers that you have to send. That's where the money, all that upcharge that you didn't think about. And then there's people who, and I messed this up on my first Kickstarter, and I was like, no, this ain't never happening again. People will create these tiers and these rewards, thinking, oh, this is exciting. People will jump on this, and then you didn't think about the full cost of making those rewards. And sometimes there are rewards that you're like, oh shit, how do I send this particular reward out without damaging the reward and sending the book out as well? So there's all these different things that sneak up on you that you don't really think about, and then you realize sometimes you get in the red. Like, as successful as the first Isnata was to a lot of people, I was in the red for quite a while. And it wasn't until after the second volume that I was like, okay, I'm free, But it's a thing that happens for many, many, many people. Even some people who've been doing it for a while, they realize, shit, I fucked up this time. And you really want to try to do rewards where it excites people and it seems like it's worth the price, but it really didn't cost you much of anything to get it done. So you're definitely gonna have to maybe even triple the cost of whatever that is that it costs you.
And just with that reward thing, you also wanted to have like rewards. Like, so I did coffee mugs one time. It was like, cool, and these mugs are really cool. But that's a whole different type of shipping than shipping a book, right? So now I gotta buy these little bitty boxes, and I gotta get all this stuff to make sure they don't break, and I have to send that separate. So now I got two, charges. Or I could get a bigger box, which is just off the rip gonna charge more. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, be conscious of the type of stuff, because it's all fun and games. It's like, oh, he's putting a video game system in there. And then when it's time, it's like, you're mud. Like, I'm going broke, mailing out people. Why did I come up with this stupid ass?
We have a question here over here.
So I'm gonna ask kind of a cool question here, because I'm someone who likes to write and draw, and sometimes I like writing for a story, but I don't want to draw it, or I do want to draw, but I have no story to look for. So this is more of like a resource question of like, let's say you want to get an artist, or you want to provide a service of being an artist for it. What are some places you can go to like do that? So I'm thinking like, where can I essentially either sell myself or find someone who wants to do it?
Sell yourself, I like that. So, I'd say, for example, where I found my artist for the first volume for my book was a site called penciljack.com. And I posted an ad there, and that's how I was able to find him. I had a lot of people reach out to me. I don't know if this site is still jumping, but digitalwebbing.com also, I found artists there. For a while, DeviantArt Facebook, Instagram, like any type of social media where you see people posting art, you can literally reach out and be like, hey, I don't know if you have time, the availability, or the interest, but I'm looking for an artist for this book. It is paid, it's this and that and the third. Or you can be one of those artists who are looking for work on the same exact websites, because there's always writers who are struggling to find an artist, to help them bring something out. So I'd say those type of resources, those sites could probably help you out with what you're looking for. I will say though, when you get something out, even if it's something very minuscule, like this is my idea, this is only 5 pages of an idea I have, and you could actually draw it, because you said you're an artist. People will start to find you, become fans, and I've realized some of my fans end up becoming my artists in later books. And I struggled like hell finding an artist initially for my comics. Like, for example, I wanted Isnana to be always a all black type of book, like the artists and everything like that. The first volume was not. It was me and the cover artists who were the only black folks involved with the book, because every time I reached out to a black artist, either I couldn't afford them, even though I think they were worth money, but I couldn't afford them. I would hear a lot of bullshit about like, I'm not sure you want to work with them, or they didn't want to take a chance because I was an unknown. They didn't know who the hell I was, right? They knew sometimes I wrote reviews and I interviewed people, but they didn't know me as an actual, not an actual writer, but a comic writer. It wasn't until after Volume 1 blew up, people read it, and then Volume 2 came out, people read it. Now, my black folks are wanting to take that chance on me, and they want to join in. So if you've noticed my series, it has become more and more black in terms of like the creative team, because it's like, finally, I have the resource to do this. I have the recognition now to do that. But it's literally just finding what works for you at the moment. What can you do now? It may not be what you actually want to do, but if I take this step, this might get me closer to what I want to do. And I think some people get stuck of like, this ain't what I want to do. I'm not going to do it. No. And they get stuck there for mad long. But sometimes you just got to do shit you don't want to do, to get there. I hope that helped in any way.
Yeah, it helps a lot.
And he's nailing it. The only thing I would add is like places like this, like the most recent children's book I dropped. I had Michaela Moore do the pencils and inks. I met her here, I believe. Seen her at Richmond, whatever that name of that con is. No offense if anybody's looking. I saw, at Tidewater, so I saw her at a couple of different places. And, I think we all, like, when we get a chance, we get up, we walk around, especially at those kind of cons, and we see who's black there, and it's like, yo, you got a book? Let me get it. Yeah. Let me get a poster, spread that money around. And then I was like, hey, have you ever done a children's book? She's like, yeah. And we just talking, next thing you know, we got a book, So one of the cool things about meeting people at cons and like the social settings is you can kind of see if this is even the kind of person I would want to work with. And then you can even get like sketch commissions to make sure you're not getting catfished. Because like Fiverr, like places like that, they'll catfish the hell out of you. I tried to do Fiverr one time, man. This dude was like, yeah, I can do this. And he's showing me all this cool looking art. And then when he turns me pages, I'm like, everybody like, how do you, it's like you're trying to make them look lifeless. Why are you doing this? Why is everybody like this? No, she's crying. She's, I'm like, what? Never mind. Here's the money. And don't send me any more messages. You know what I mean? So, you get all that. I had a great relationship that got 2 books done with a guy that I met on Instagram. I didn't even meet him in person until we were working on the second book. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you exhaust all efforts, but when you find somebody that really rocks with you, keep them.
I got a funny story about so my latest book for Isnana, the artist is Sean Hill, who.
Oh my gosh, that book is so good and you need to go down there and buy it first thing in the morning. Like,
Yeah, but he is fucking amazing. So last year when we were working on the book, we've gone through so many pages and stuff. And he comes to my table and he's like, yo, Greg, what's up? And I'm like, yo, what's up? And I'm like, and he's like, it's me, Sean. I'm like, oh, cool. And he's like, I'm drawing your book. I'm like, oh shit! So that does happen. You end up working with folks, not really realizing like who they are, because they don't really post to, like Sean doesn't really post too many pictures of
you don't
him.
see his face.
Yeah, you don't really see it.
All you
So
see is this beastly art that he
yeah.
produced.
But like you guys have like this great rapport. Sometimes y'all even open up online because y'all just shooting the shits and chatting. And when you finally meet in person, either you recognize or you don't. And it's like this really, I don't know, I sort of have fun with that. I enjoy that. I enjoy being surprised.
We did. I had Kanan White had done like 2 pieces for me.
Yeah.
And he walked up to the table in San Diego. I didn't know him from anybody. Because he's another one, he doesn't post himself. And so he was like, hey, what's up, man? I'm like, what's up, man? And he's like, it's me, Kanan. I'm like, Kanan who? And he's like, Kanan White. I'm like, oh shit, you're a real person? Because if you see this man's art and then you understand how fast he is, like, I was like, that's a robot. I was ready to give bet Marcus like, I got $50 on it, man. This dude is not a human. And he was a human, so it's cool. But again, met him online. The first time we met him, he did a piece of fan art for us for Tuskegee Heirs. We didn't ask him to. He just posted it. We're like, hey man, can I pay you some money? And he's like, don't worry about it. I was like, no, I'm worried about it. And I pay you some money because I want to be able to sell this bad boy. So.
I have one question. Well, go ahead.
I like the idea of the sketch commission, so it's 2 quick questions. You get to quick, how to go about getting a sketch commission, and then also, are there any publishers that are available to new writers?
Is there any publishers out there that's available to us as writers?
Or available to like new writers.
Oh, new writers.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So you're like, as in Malachi, like, as like a brand new fresh writer, I wouldn't say it's 100% not possible, but you're gonna have to come with some examples. You're gonna have to win them over, and they're probably gonna charge you like pay you peanuts because you don't have anything to stand on. You know what I'm saying?
Okay,
So-
the sketch commission.
Honestly, just you can either reach out to the artist or just find an artist here. You're at the convention the rest of the weekend, right? Find somebody that you like, ask them if they do commissions. Sometimes they'll get it to you by the end of the day or the end of the whole convention. Sometimes they'll say, I'm backed up, can we exchange infos? I can send it to you when I'm done eventually. But that's also a great way for you to gauge not only their work ethic, how professional they are, as well as how fast they can be. Because there's some people who have been waiting on somebody's commission for years. And they're reaching out, and sometimes it makes them feel away when they see them constantly posting different types of artwork, and you're like, yo, I paid for this. Like, where's my shit? Like,
9 years ago.
So that's a great way to gauge of like, I ain't working with that motherfucker no more, and yet you have somebody who can pull out something real dope for you on that day or like within a week, and you're just like, okay, maybe there's somebody I want to work with, and then you start to see that they're constantly posting other people's commissions. That means they are actually fulfilling their thing, and it's not like I'm waiting months for this one small little piece of a person that I'm asking for. So and just ask, how long it's gonna take, how much do they charge. Sometimes they charge based off of the amount of details or the amount of characters you want, or if you want it colored. It's a case-by-case thing with each artist, but I'd say roam around this weekend and see who you like and just ask.
Then you also get a sense like what they're charging you for their sketch commission. That can kind of give you a sense of what they might charge you for a page to, you know, just from like, oh, you charge $600 for a pencil sketch? All right, you have a good weekend. I hope everything works out for you. You know what I'm saying?
As you all become more accomplished and more established, what is your process with reviewers and editors?
So I don't want to be condescending, but if people, like comic book editors are different than like copy editors.
Yeah.
So like a comic book editor is basically your boss on the book, right? They're gonna yay and nay, and they're gonna lead you. They're gonna tell you, hey man, I need you to get more out of this. So like my thing, and it's like when I, you know, started with the DC stuff, people was like, oh, they're not gonna let you do what you want to do, and blah blah blah. I'm like, oh, I do what I want to do, you know, all the time on my own books. So when I'm working for them, it's just like if I was a chef and working at a restaurant, if you want pickles on this pizza, throw some pickles on there, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm gonna do my best to still give my best, but understand at the end of the day, it's their, you know, it's not mine. So I do that. It's like, it's a way of me saying, okay, I'm gonna get attached, I'm gonna try to bust my butt on it, but I'm not gonna be like broken up if everything isn't exactly how I want it, because I know I don't really own this property, you know what I'm saying? So that's the mind state. I'm like if an editor says, hey, I need, you know, let's think about changing this film, okay, like show me, like, not show me, but lead me the way you want, because at the end of the day, that editor who is your boss, they're the first one that's gonna get fired if they hire you and you put out some crap. That's not really true, because they be putting out crap. But you know, it's like their job is on the line every time they, you know, step out too. So that's my thing. I try to make it to where it's like definitely like a team thing. Like I got really good reviews for my the story I have in the Milestone that I have at my table downstairs, in the Milestone anthology, and like I sent stuff to the editor. Like there's people making TikToks and all this stuff, and I'm like, yo, thank you for you know helping, you know, like working with me in this process. I feel like we made something great, and people are starting to acknowledge it. So that's my mentality. But I'm, like I said, we have our own comic book companies, and we do what we want to do all the time. You know what I'm saying? So I'm working with you on your stuff. You paying me some money. Like I said, I'm still gonna give my best, but I'm not gonna press if you want pickles on pizza. Like, throw money and be like, yeah, you know.
I actually personally enjoy working with editors. So my majority of my stuff that I release myself, I don't always use an editor, because I can be very meticulous on myself, and I'm always getting on people about grammar and stuff. Sometimes some folks will send me their script and I'm just like, bro, your grammar is terrible. And they think I'm just being a hard ass, but I'm like, nah.
Oh, Greg, you need more commas in there.
Yeah.
So I should get credited for the title of Swim Kelly Swim, because I was like, bro, you need a comma here, you should have broke this down and everything like that. And
I was doing hood. Like,
I felt good when I saw it on the table today. I'm like, you listen to me.
like, and that's how I know you ain't been paying attention, because I changed it as soon as you said so.
But the thing that I enjoy about editors is while I do enjoy doing whatever I want, with editors is they see a story in a particular way that you probably didn't see it, and they'll tell you this is not too strong, or like, why did you write this way, or they may have a different vision in mind, and sometimes that vision actually sticks with your theme and your core, but it just makes it stronger. And sometimes the editor comes and is like, dude, you only have 5 pages, why are you writing a whole epic? And you're just like, crap. And you start to realize those 5 extra pages you wrote really wasn't that strong. And when you start to condense it down because they give you this limit, or it's pretty much trying to find ways to maneuver around the rules, and sometimes it just makes your work stronger. Now there are some editors that they may not know how to talk to you or how to work with you, and you're just like, fuck this motherfucker, you know? And sometimes it's like they don't understand you. And it's I don't know, it's like a ebb and flow. And an example I will use is one book that I wrote, one short that I wrote for an anthology. You have the publisher, you have the editor. Even though the work was great, these were white guys reading me who writes a whole bunch of black shit. And I wrote a couple of different stuff that I felt like, oh, this is for us. And they're like, we don't understand, why did you write this, you know? And one thing that I've realized, sometimes you can literally just say, it's a black thing, and they're just like, okay, cool. And I've gotten away with so much because of that. But there are times where it's like you have to explain the blackness, and it just gets so frustrating and annoying. And then there's times where they're just like, we need to take this out. It doesn't go with what they had in mind. And you can either try to fight it and be seen as difficult, or you can just be like, you know what, maybe you're right, and you just, whatever. And you just do what you gotta do, and that is what it is. You know, and so you gotta choose your battles. I tend to be one of those people that tend to fight a lot. And sometimes I've had editors reach out and be like, you were right. And I'm just like, you see, told you. But yeah, it's really based off of how like you feel comfortable with with their vision, if their vision actually aligns with your vision. Because sometimes don't let your stubbornness keep you from actually making your story stronger, because somebody is critiquing your work and you're taking it the hard way. Because sometimes criticism actually does make you stronger. But know when somebody is being a hater as well. Because some people tend to just hate to hate, and you can always tell this person is a hater versus this person is actually telling me something that's very substantial.
Yeah, you can usually tell the haters. Just a quick example, like I'm writing this character for this thing, and it's horror, so I'm ready to go like all in, and he's like, all right, this is great, but you can't do this with this guy. I'm like, oh, I didn't really think about that. So that's something I can't fight, because if I try to fight, like DC's not gonna let you do this with this guy, so you just got to figure something else out, right? So you're looking at it like it's a team effort, right? It's not me and the editor, it's all of us coming together. We're a band. You playing the cello, I'm playing the cello. The point is, you're playing an instrument, I'm playing an instrument, and we need to all come together to make like some good music. So that's the way I look at it. I haven't had to deal with like a really crappy editor yet. I have a great one, so yeah. But I've had other people that come and chime in. It's like, why'd you do this? Why'd you? And it's the same thing. It's like you just don't get it. It's cool. It's cool. Yeah. Janae, you got any questions?
I do have one question.
50,000.
That's like, you were talking about details and writing everything out. When it comes to like your world building and character development, when in the writing process do you start that, and how much details are too much?
What is that? We got 5 minutes. So I feel one of my shortcomings as a writer is I do not tend to world build before I start writing. I'll have like the general idea of like, this is the world, this is where they are, these are the rules for these particular characters. But I realize that my characters, as I'm writing them, that tends to enforce what the world they live in. That's when I start coming up with the rules, and this is a hierarchy that happens in the rules. This is where they're at. I've known some people who will world build for years and years and years, and I still don't see that fucking book at all. And it's just like, I'm just coming up with, the rules in the world and everything, and it's cool. It's very fascinating. But then it's like, you've spent all this time, but you haven't worked on your characters. You don't know what the hell, like, what is the story? I know
What's
the world,
your
but what the
name?
Yeah, what the hell? But the thing, I feel like it can be balanced, because there is a project that I'm working on where, because it's like this elaborate mythology that's going on, I was like, what the fuck, how do I create this? And I had the characters down, But then I reached out to one of my world building friends, and he was just like, "Oh, just try this." And I was like, "Holy shit! I never thought of that." You know. And so everyone has their shortcomings and their skills when it comes to things like world building and description. But I tend to just go by first the story and the main concept, and then the world sort of starts to build around those characters, because it ends up becoming what is the theme and the message, and that always falls down to who your character is. Then it's like, what is the world that helps reinforce that message and the theme, and I go from there. But I'm not saying that's a wrong way. Like, if you feel like you want to world build first, but know when to just be like, I have enough. Let me work on the characters and like, why are they important to this actual world and story? Like, how do they interact now? Just don't be one of those people who spend years. Yeah.
And it's character, like, I always look at it like it's character over everything, right? If you have interesting characters, let's take Star Wars for instance. They had interesting characters. That could have been a samurai, show. That could have been a Western. It could have been so many different things. The world was great, don't get me wrong, but the thing that made that, the series great was the characters, right? Darth Vader trumps, whatever planet they were on at this day or time. So I always,
It's a basic ass. Well,
it's really basic.
Yeah, the first Star Wars was extremely basic.
Like, but in any other setting, it's super basic.
But if
Examples of hero with 1,000 fists.
yeah,
so it's that's what you look at, and then like Greg said, the world building. I'm gonna expose my world to you while I'm showing you these characters, what these characters are doing.
like if you look now, there's a shit ton with Star Wars, but it all started from this basic ass first story, and then as it kept going, it became more and more all over the place. But I don't want to make you lose this.
We got 30 seconds. Go. No pressure.
How do you make the decision for a story to go like comic versus maybe like a story that would be a novel or an illustrated novel? Like, is that a decision?
For me, I always start off like, oh man, this would be a great novel, and I start writing it, and I'm like, psych. Because I love comics, and I see the kids that come up to the table, the grown women, the grown men that come up to the table, and the way that they can visually see, visually see, that's stupid. They can see. Shut up. And I haven't even had a drink yet. But they can see, themselves, like, when you have like a grown woman open up your children's book and be like, she looks like me, and get excited, it's like, yeah, what do I need to do a novel for? I don't need comics until I can afford animation and movies.
It comes down to what you want to do. If you want to make it a comic, cool. If you want to make it a novel, there's people who actually do both. Like Malachi right here.
Why did we do that?
Yeah. His book started off as a novel, 2 novels, by the way, and now it's a comic book. And there's people who do that, and it's really freaking cool to see that, because sometimes you see that character in a completely different light. You're like, oh, I didn't imagine a character looking like this. But you still have the novel. It's like, I prefer this, but some people prefer novels, some people prefer graphic novels or comics, some people like both. I'd say just see whichever one appeals to you as a writer.
We're wrapping up. Can y'all tell everyone where you are this weekend?
So we're both downstairs at
And your
Artist
socials.
Alley.
Sorry.
Artist Alley, you will find, once you walk in, make that turn, you'll see me on the right. Somewhere I'm sharing a table with Lucky Sanford, who's in the back right there. Shout out to him right there. So if you see him, most likely you'll see me. I have pretty much most of my books. My social media on Twitter is Greg and Elysée, Elysee, or Greg Day, DAE, on Instagram. Those are the main ones, I'd say.
And if you come in, you turn your back on where he is and look this way. Like once you walk in, it'll be hard to miss us.
They have like 5 tables on
Mind your business. So you'll see the Tuskegee Heirs banners, and then on Instagram, I'm Greg _Burnham 7, I think. Thank you, Damon. And
Burnham with
yeah.
an H.
Yeah, with an H. And then I be on Facebook because I'm old.
Look at what I'm saying. We all on Facebook, right? Yeah.
You say that certain places, they be like, oh, where's your cane? Facebook. I suck on Twitter, but I'm not like Greg be like posting stuff.
What's
I
your Black
post.
Planet handle?
That's classified. But if you come to the table tomorrow, I might be able to talk to you about that.
So one last thing. I'm sorry. One last thing. Greg said this to me earlier, and I was like, this is a perfect way. I am the one person without a banner. So if you look for the table without a banner, you won't find me.
He turns my insult into like I'm like, you still ain't got no banner. And he's like, I'm gonna use that. I'm the man without a banner.
Thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.
Really thank you guys. Hopefully you got something out. I don't know about Greg, but I do know about Greg. If you guys have extra questions and stuff, you guys see us down there tomorrow. We love this. Like, really.